America just paused a critical weapons shipment to Ukraine. No one seems to know who authorized it. Not the White House, not the Secretary of State, not even the President himself. The man behind the decision, Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. And now the administration is scrambling. Congress is furious. Ukraine is confused. Even Trump says, "I don't know, why don't you tell me?" This is more than a policy debate. This is a real-time case study in government breakdown. Let's unpack what just happened, who made the call, and what it means for us credibility, global security, and the future of the war in Ukraine. Last week, the Pentagon suddenly paused a major weapons shipment to Ukraine. No one in the White House was told ahead of time. It's not the President. It's not Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Not National Security Advisor Keith Kellogg. They all found out from the news. The man behind the move, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. According to 5 sources, Hegseth didn't inform the White House, didn't alert Congress, didn't brief interagency partners. It was the second time this year he had made that call. The first was in February. That pause was reversed quickly. This one, almost exactly the same. Trump had to step in. During a cabinet meeting, Trump was asked about the pause. He didn't claim it. He didn't deny it. He said, quote, "I don't know. Why don't you tell me?" Later, he clarified. Weapons would continue flowing. Defensive weapons, he said. And then the Pentagon announced the shipments would resume. But it didn't change the fact that the decision had been made without him, or without his closest advisors. So how does something like this happen? Sources say Hegseth is isolated. He has no chief of staff, no core team, no one to challenge him on major calls, or tell him to coordinate with the White House. And that's a problem. Because when you're managing wartime aid to an ally like Ukraine, you don't freelance. After learning of the halt, Trump ordered that some shipments resume. Specifically, the Patriot air defense missiles. Those weapons are critical. They intercept incoming Russian missiles and drones. They save lives. Many of them were already in Poland, ready for transfer. This was a weapons package created by the previous administration, and it was already en route to Ukraine when it was stopped. Trump later called Zelensky, tried to distance himself from the decision, told him the shipments would continue, but by then, damage was already done. This wasn't just a case of poor communication. It was an outright breakdown. National security officials were blindsided. Congress wasn't informed. Ukraine wasn't warned. And neither was the U.S. State Department. Secretary of State Marco Rubio only found out through media. Same with Kellogg. No interagency meeting, no classified briefing, just silence, then headlines. So what's the Pentagon's explanation? They say it's about stockpiles, that the U.S. needs to evaluate its military aid pipeline, and that this was part of a routine review. Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson said Hegseth was helping Trump evaluate inventory, and that the move was coordinated. But sources say otherwise. This wasn't coordinated. It was improvised. It left allies guessing. The real reason? It might go back to the NATO summit. Trump had reportedly asked Hegseth for a full assessment of U.S. weapon stockpiles. Iran and Israel were escalating. Trump wanted to be sure the U.S. had enough defense capabilities of its own. Fair enough. But here's the twist. Trump never asked Hegseth to pause shipments to Ukraine. That idea came from somewhere else. Enter Elbridge Colby, Under-Secretary of Defense for Policy, known critic of U.S. support for Ukraine. He's been saying for months the U.S. should focus on China and Asia, not Europe. Last year, he posted, "A Europe-first policy is not what America needs in this dangerous time." Sources say he recommended the pause. He passed it to Deputy Secretary Steve Feinberg. Feinberg approved, Hegseth signed off, believing it matched Trump's America First priorities. Except Trump didn't actually order it. Once the White House found out, they were furious. But they also didn't want a public split. So they tried to provide cover, told Hegseth to explain it to Congress. Privately assured Ukraine that aid was still coming. But there was one big problem. Congress hadn't been told anything. No justification, no documents, no classified briefing, nothing. Now, lawmakers are demanding answers. If there was a real shortage, why weren't they briefed? Why didn't the Pentagon ask for emergency funds? Congress routinely approves extra money for military procurement, but no such request was made, a senior source said. If this was urgent, should have told us. They didn't. So either the stockpile excuse is real and they were negligent, or it's not real, and this was ideological. Either way, the process broke down. For Ukraine, this was a blow. They rely on consistency, they rely on trust, and suddenly, missiles they were expecting stopped, even though they were already on the way. For Russia, it was a gift, a crack in the US alliance, a moment of hesitation. For Europe, it raised alarms about US reliability. Ironically, Trump now seems more skeptical of Putin than ever. At the NATO summit, sources say Trump was visibly frustrated. He's tired of broken promises from Moscow, he told reporters. We get a lot of thrown at us by Putin. He's nice, but it turns out to be meaningless. That's not the Trump-Putin dynamic we've seen in years past. Something shifted. This isn't just about one shipment, it's about control, about communication, and about who's really making us foreign policy. A defense secretary who acts without coordination, president cleaning up the mess, a Pentagon divided over strategy, a Congress left in the dark. It's messy, dangerous, and deeply revealing. This isn't just a Pentagon issue anymore, it's turning into a political flashpoint. Democrats are calling it reckless. Republicans are split. Some Mogolene voices support the pause. Others are demanding tighter control over the Defense Department. Congress is now eyeing new legislation, something that forces notification before any foreign aid is altered. The idea that a cabinet member can quietly halt shipments to a war zone, that's becoming unacceptable to both parties. It's a bipartisan alarm bell, and it's ringing louder every day. Let's not forget what's at stake. This wasn't just a policy pause, it was a battlefield delay. Patriot missiles defend civilians. They intercept Russian rockets over hospitals, schools, apartment buildings. Even a 48-hour pause can lead to deadly gaps. And if Ukraine doesn't know what's coming next, how can they plan defense strategies? The war isn't on pause. But for a few days, America's support was, and that could have cost lives, or worse, trust. So what happens now? Trump says the shipments will continue, but he's also asked for a full review of stockpiles. That means more internal debates, more Pentagon pressure, and maybe more friction between Trump and his own appointees. Will Hegseth face consequences? Unclear. Will Congress demand limits on unilateral actions like this? Very likely in Ukraine. They'll keep asking, is US support stable or conditional? If there's a next time, will it be fixed in 48 hours or not at all? This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a much bigger one. What does this all mean going forward? More caution, more oversight, likely more congressional hearings. But more importantly, it shows just how fragile wartime coordination really is. Ukraine can't afford pauses. US can't afford confusion. The world can't afford surprises from the Pentagon. This story isn't over, and the next pause might not get reversed. If you found this breakdown helpful, tap like, hit subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Was this just poor communication or something bigger? Thanks for watching. Stay informed. Stay skeptical.